Greetings, friends, and welcome to Captain Samuel's Cure for Platitudes. November 11th is Veterans Day, and I spent 20 years in the Space Force in the fourth millennium as the captain of the USSF Heaven's Dulcimer. It was a waste and recycling freighter. And then, as a result of temporal distortion, I unfortunately found myself in our current time period where I was a low ranking grunt in the U.S. Army and a machine gunner. And I want to talk about today some books, nonfiction, that have helped me to make sense of all my military experiences. And it's my hope that these books can help other vets and help other people that might not have had these experiences understand veterans a little bit better and go beyond the typical platitudes. And I just want to say that I don't speak for all veterans, just for me. And some of the books are a little bit political. So if you're not looking for political content today, that's okay. But we're not going to go into the weeds with that. But some of them do have some political messages. Also, I apologize for my voice. I have a bit of a cold. So the first book up is one of my favorites, Worthy of Gratitude: Why Veterans May Not Want to Be Thanked for Their Service in War. And this is my Camilo Mac Bica. I've actually met him at some veterans retreats. And he is a Marine Corps veteran of the Vietnam War. And what he says in this book is that war is killing, war is destruction, and that is an odd thing to thank someone for. He also says that while there's this mythos of veterans as healers and defenders of freedom, very often wars are carried out to help the elite, privileged few that control the political and monetary power in the United States. And therefore, true service is to work for peace and equality and justice in our nation, rather than going overseas, killing and destroying, and just kind of whitewashing that with some kind of hero mythos. Personally, I hate when people say thank you for your service, because I agree with a lot of what this book has to say. When people say that, I don't think that they know the horrible things that happen in war, and if they knew, they wouldn't say thank you for that. So sometimes, actually, when I go to veterans marches or veterans protests, I'll actually pop this book in my pocket and pop it out to just politely share my perspective with people that might say that to me. Okay, the next book is also by Camilo Mac Bica, and this is Beyond PTSD: The Moral Casualties of War. And what this book says is that the issues which veterans, especially combat veterans, tend to experience after their time in war is conceptualized by society and the establishment as an illness with the veteran. Like they're psychologically sick, like something is wrong with them. And what that model fails to address is that people typically live by a moral code, and the atrocities and destruction that war demands people to commit damage those moral codes. And it's important to address that as kind of a communal path to wellness. So if you just say, oh, the problem with a veteran is that they're crazy and we need to fix their craziness, that's leaving out a ton of the rest of the issue, that their moral code has been damaged and their society has asked them to do morally reprehensible things, and society has also got to own that. And furthermore, he goes on to say that if someone's legs were blown off in a war, you wouldn't say that they had missing leg disorder syndrome. You would say that they were wounded, their legs got blown off. And so the psychological, spiritual, and moral impact of war, that's also a wound. It's not some personal defect of someone. It's a wound. And oftentimes the enemy action is done intentionally to wound people's psyches. And he makes the argument that people with PTSD should be eligible to receive the Purple Heart. So really, two excellent books by Camilla MacBeeka. And there are times when I'm like, man, consensus society just doesn't get it. I'll pop these two out and draw some comfort for them. I really enjoy them. Okay, up next we've got On Killing, the Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Now this is an interesting and important book. What it talks about is most everyday people have a built-in preventative measure in their minds against killing and hurting other people. Now, if you think about it, someone in our society that would go around killing and hurting other people, we'd call them psychotic. We'd call them an axe murderer. In war, what's required is killing and hurting other people. So, throughout war, soldiers haven't always killed. They've postured, which is basically trying to scare the enemy off. And with modern warfare, techniques have been developed to remove that natural inhibition against killing so that in a combat environment, soldiers won't just posture, they'll kill. And what happens when these Frankenstein monsters get out of war and come back home? They don't fit in. They're ostracized. They get themselves in trouble. And this book is a deep dive into what that process looks like of getting people, everyday people, to become killers that will do their gruesome job in war and what the cost of that is. Oh, I love this book. It's a good one. On Killing. Okay, next up we've got Achilles in Vietnam, Combat Trauma and the Undoing of Character by Jonathan Shea, Ph.D. Now, Jonathan Shea is a psychotherapist who worked with Vietnam veterans in the New England area. And as he would hear the stories of these returning Vietnam veterans, he realized, wow, this sounds like the stories of Achilles and his troops in the Iliad in the Trojan War. And so this book draws parallels between those two conflicts. And this is a good read because it talks about even thousands of years ago, war was still having a negative impact on the people that participated in it. And it talks about how war has a deleterious effect on one's moral character and the shrinking of the moral horizon so that, only your comrades and you are important. The hell with everybody else. You got to kill and do what you got to do to survive. And that one really kind of cycles back to this one. It's not, a mental illness. It's a moral injury. So you kind of get these similar themes across different books, which I think is neat. Okay, Dr. Shea also wrote a sequel called Odysseus in America, Combat Trauma and the Trials of Homecoming. And this one draws parallels between Vietnam veterans returning to the United States and Odysseus's crew in the Odyssey trying to get back home. And this is a fascinating read too. I love the parallels between those two time periods, and it just shows that, whatever time period you're in, soldiers are often riding the struggle bus in some similar ways. So we've talked about how war breaks down one's mind, one's spirit, one's moral character. Once you're aware of that, once I became aware of that, I realized, okay, where do I go from here? How do I rebuild a moral code for myself? And after I got out of the Army and I was running around in college, one of the first books I got was Ethics for the New Millennium by the Dalai Lama. And so what this book is about is, it says, Don't worry about what religion you are. You don't have to be Buddhist or this or that. Just get a moral code that values others. Because when you value others, that comes back to you. So even if you need to take a self-centered approach to it, recognize that if you care for others, that's caring for you too. And the world is going to be a better place and it's going to come back to you. So for a while there, I was really into Buddhism. And check out this book. This is At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace by Claude Anshin Thomas. Now, Anshin is a Vietnam veteran who really struggled after Vietnam. And he eventually became a Buddhist monk. And he leads veterans healing retreats several times during the year. And I actually went to a few of them. And for a little bit there, I even studied under him. So I've still got some of my old Shakyo. Those are like Buddhist writings. I think that's the term for it. I forget, it's been a while. In the book. This is a powerful book. Man, I love this book. It talks about how the roots of suffering and war aren't out there. All these external circumstances, they're in here. Suffering is a fundamental part of life. And what do we do with that suffering? Do we act out in violent, destructive ways? Or do we recognize that I'm suffering right now? Maybe there's something I can do about it. Maybe there's not. And I just need to accept that I'm suffering. And he also talks a lot about mindfulness practicing, focusing on the breath, and being aware of what you're doing right now. Zen is right now. It's just paying attention to what you're doing in the moment. And if you're paying attention to your choices, then hopefully you won't find yourself dissociating on the battlefield doing awful things. He's a really good guy, too. Check out zaltho.org, ZALTHO.org, for his website and events. Cool guy. Okay, here's another good one. Man's Search for Meaning, An Introduction to Logotherapy by Viktor Frankl. It's hard for me to talk about this book without tearing up. He was a psychotherapist that was in a concentration camp for a number of years and survived. And he talked about how to get through brutal, difficult experiences, finding some meaning in that will help a person get through. And there's also this scene in here where after he and his buddies are out of the concentration camp, they're out for a walk in the countryside, and some of his buddies trample through a farmer's crops. And Viktor Frankl's like, hey, what are you guys doing? You're trampling this farmer's crops. And they're like, come on, man, we were just in a concentration camp, and you're worried about some crops? Who cares? And he talks about how no matter what harm is done to us, we don't have the right to harm others. That gets me right in the feels, because as a veteran, I can get bitter, I can get victim thinking, I can go to an angry, rageful place. But is that going to make life better for me? Is that going to make the world a better place? An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, to quote Gandhi. Love this book. Man's Search for Meaning. Okay, and here is our last book of the evening. Now, this is an interesting one. This is The Walk of Glory by Andre R. Kairouz. That's not the author's real name. So I was a Humvee gunner on a convoy that escorted a one-star general all around Baghdad for a year. And this is the book by the interpreter that was with our unit. So probably the first third of this book is about my unit and what we did. And the rest of the book is the other units that the interpreter stayed on with after my unit rotated back to the States. I'm not in the book. Unfortunately, I was a young jerk at the time, and this interpreter, I didn't see eye to eye on some stuff, and so I would tease him and just kind of be annoying. So I didn't make it into the book for those reasons. Young and stupid. I'll also say, though, that even though it's interesting to read this account of what my unit did, the account is not factually accurate in all respects. For example, we got ambushed in this village one time from the wood line, and, there was some gunplay, and we fought them off, and, we made it out. In the book, the author has fighter jets swoop down and bomb the guys in the wood line. That never happened. There was also a time, and this is some ironic stuff in 2025 United States, but there were these partisan militia members of either Sunni or Shia Islam, I forget which, that were illegally kidnapping and detaining people of the opposite religious sect from off the street. And when we found out that some of these citizens were going missing, we found their secret torture facility and shut it down. And there were probably, I would say, at the absolute max, maybe 12, 15 people in that torture facility that we rescued. But he's got it where it was like hundreds and hundreds of people that we rescued. That's not the case. So, yeah, it's kind of cool that there's this book about what my unit did, but there's a lot of made-up bullshit in it, to be quite blunt. But it's still cool, and I'm still glad I have it. Anyway, sorry I've got a cold. Hope you enjoyed this video of a veteran talking about books while also sounding like he's going through puberty and having his voice change or something. But, yeah, I get a lot out of these books. They've really supported me. And hopefully they can support you as well, or someone you care about. Okay. Hope you're doing well, everyone. Thanks for watching.